Okay, here we go. Starting again. Um, we are in Parshat Pinchas, and we're going to explore chapter 27, which is contains in it two stories that I think are familiar to us. The first is the story of Benot Tzlofchad, the daughters of Tzlofchad. We're going to look at that second. Um, but right, the general thrust of the story is that Moshe has just completed a census of the people, which we're told is in order to begin the process of allocating or assigning land in the land of Israel to the various tribes and each family clan within each tribe. And the rule, of course, is that the land is given based on the number of sons, based on the number of male children. And so the five daughters of a man named Slofchad approach Moshe and they say, well, our father didn't have any sons. He only had daughters. This doesn't seem fair. And we'll come back and explore their claim and the upshot of their claim in a little bit more detail in a little while. The second half of chapter 27 is the anointing, not anointing, right? We have to be very precise, is the smicha, the appointment of Yehoshua through smicha, through the process of Moshe leaning on him, placing his hands on his head, as the next leader of Bnei Israel. Okay, and so again, we've looked at both of these separate stories in detail in previous years. I think they're probably posted. I hope they're posted on the YouTube channel, which Arthur can direct you how to find now, right, Arthur?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, so you can go back and look at that. But let's begin in verse 12. I will display the English on the screen. Someone please tell me when it's time to scroll further down. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Alei el har ha'averim hazeh, u're'et ha'aretz asher natati livnei Yisrael. So God instructs Moshe, ascend Mount Avarim and see the land which I'm going to give to Bnei Israel. V'ra'ita ota, v'ne'esafta el amecha, gam ata, kasher ne'esaf Aaron achicha. You'll see the land, and then you will die, just like Aaron your brother died. Kasher meritem pi b'midbar tzin b'merivat ha'edah, Laktisheni b'mayim le'nehem, him me merivat kadesh midbar tzin. Very difficult pasuk to translate. We'll just go with due to the fact that you rebelled against me in the Tzin desert um, by failing to sanctify me with the water. Um, they are the waters of strife in Kadesh in the Midbar in the Tzin desert. Not a very good or precise translation, but it's not essential to what where we're going to go with this passage. And so now Moshe's right. Moshe's told this is really it, and right as we'll see, as we know throughout Sefer Devarim, he's going to have a hard time accepting that, and he's going to push back again and again. But he's told this is the time that he has to die. He really is not going to get to enter the land. He has opportunity to see it, but that's as far as Moshe is going to go. We're in verse 18. Sorry, verse 17. Nope. Let's try that one more time. Verse 15. Vaydaber Moshe el Hashem lemor. Moshe spoke to God, saying, Yivkod Hashem Elokei haruchot lechol basar ish aleda. God, who is the God of ruchot, the God of spirits. Again, not a precise translation. We delved into this when we looked in detail in the story of Yehoshua's appointments. Um, the God who understands individuals, the God who understands different perspectives, something along those lines. God you should appoint someone over the nation, Asher Yitzei Lifnehem, Asher Yavo Lifnehem, who will go out in front of them and will come before them, Vasher Yotziem, Vasher Yeviem. and who will take them out and will bring them in. Lotia adat Hashem katzon asher ein la roeh, and God's flock should not be like sheep without a shepherd. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Kach lecha et Yoshua bin Nun, ish asher ruach bo, v'samachta et yadcha alav. God says, good idea, Moshe. Take Yehoshua the son of Nun, a man who has the spirit in him, and you shall lay your hand upon him. V'hamadata oto lifnei Elazar Kohen v'lifnei kol ha'ida, v'tivita oto le'neihem. And you should stand him in front of Elazar the Kohen, and in front of the entire people, and command him in front of them. Natata mehodcha alav, should give some of your glory to him. L'man yishmu kol adat b'nei Yisrael, in order that the entire Jewish nation will hear. Lifnei Elazar Kohen Yamod v'sha'al b'mishpat torim lifnei Hashem al piv yetzu v'al piv yavou hu v'chol b'nei Yisrael ito v'chol ha'ida. And he will stand before Elazar of the Kohen. Right, Elazar has already ascended to be the Kohen Gadol in the place of Aharon, his father. And he will ask from Elazar in the Urim, on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. He will inquire of him. And based on what the response is, they will leave and they will come, he and the entire nation. Vayas Moshe kasher tzivah Hashem. Moshe did as God commanded him. Vayikach Yehoshua ve'yamideu lifnei Elazar Kohen v'lifnei kol ha'ida. And he took Yoshua, and he stood him before Elazar and before the entire nation. Vayismoch et yadav alav vayitzaveu kasher diber Hashem biyad Moshe. And he placed his hands upon him and commanded him as God had commanded Moshe. Okay, so this is, right, a very powerful moment, obviously, in the life of Moshe and Yehoshua, as the leadership is being transferred. It also is the basis of the concept or the institution of smicha, of ordination of rabbis. Right? I almost, maybe next year we'll look at what's the status of smicha in our days. So we know that smicha was a formal institution that, from one generation to the next, and at some point that formal institution was lost. So what does it mean when we say that rabbis nowadays have smicha is a really interesting question. But so that's what's going on here. Are there any details, any pieces of this story that you have questions about or that strike you, that grab your attention?
Well, I know you're going to pick up on the hand and hands.
Okay.
There's a difference there between what he was instructed to do, I guess you could say, and what he did do.
Okay, so Anne is right. If you look in verse 18, God tells Moshe, "V'samachta et yadcha alav," you shall place your hand in the singular upon Joshua. But in verse 22,
where we are
Vayismoch et yadav vayitzavehu. He placed his hands in the plural and commanded him. So we have so that's one interesting distinction or detail. So what I find very interesting is Moshe's job description. When Moshe turns to God and says, God, please appoint the person over the nation, so they shouldn't be like a flock without a shepherd, right? What does Moshe think the job entails? Asher yetzei lifneihem v'asher yavo lifneihem, who will go out in front of them and will come before them. Asher yotzi'im v'asher yevi'im, who will bring them and who will take them out. Right? It's an interesting description. What does it even mean? Many commentators point out that it's quite redundant. Right? Asher yetzei v'asher yavo, asher yotzi'im v'asher yevi'im.
Sorry, that's Robert. A description, perhaps, of what a past. I'm using the Yiddish word pastuch, a shepherd does.
Yeah,
You can't
exactly.
count on the sheep to be able to know what to do, where to go, and so on. It's an infantile relationship between the leader and the
Mm-hmm.
people.
Okay.
The leader has to take care of everything, and that includes the water, the food, the direction, where to stand, how to stand, and so on. The people is getting a little
So
older, so
there
maybe
are
that's
some
not appropriate.
commentators who say that it's actually Asher Yetzei Lifnehem, Asher Yavo Lifnehem, that will go out before them and come before them. That indicates kind of walking together side by side as peers, right? That's one way, right? If the people are willing to listen and to follow, but then Asher Yotziim, Asher Yiviim, who will bring them out and will bring them in, is when they're not willing, right? When they're not listening, when they're not so eagerly going together, right? That the leader has to be able to, maybe we could say lead by persuasion and convince everyone to do what he wants them to do, but sometimes he's got to throw down the fist and say, this is what's happening now.
And is this not also the terminology, at least about half of that, would be when they're going out to war?
Yeah,
He's telling you you're going to have to lead them out into the battle, and you've got to be very careful with them. You have to bring them as all back too.
right. And
Since
also many point out, right, that Moshe maybe doesn't appreciate, or maybe he does, right? But that it's the primary job, the primary role is military leadership. It's not teaching Torah, it's not issuing judgments, it's to be the military leader.
right.
Okay, so let's look at a few of the commentaries. Right, so we already noted the singular hands versus the multiple hands. So Rashi notes that as well. Vaismach et yadav, he put his hands, the ayin yafa, yoter v'yoter mimash tava, with a generous eye, with a nice eye, more than he had been commanded. Shakadosh Baruch Hu amar lo b'samachta et yadcha. God told him, put your hand in the singular. Ru asa b'shtei yadav, and Moshe did both his hands. Asau kechli malei v'gadush. He did it as a overflowing cup, with much enthusiasm. Um, okay, so that's and then I came across this explanation from Rabbi Soloveitchik, which I thought was quite nice. Um,
Mm.
God commanded Moshe to lay one hand upon Joshua, yet Moshe laid both hands upon him. God commanded Moshe not only to do smicha, but to bestow some of your majesty, some of your hod, v'natata mehotcha alav. This majesty was figuratively imparted via Moshe's second hand. There were two Masorot that Moshe transferred to Joshua, two traditions. One is the tradition of Torah learning, of Lamdut, right? So he's not going in the military way, right? This is Rabbi Soloveitchik, the Rosh Yeshiva, the Rav. The second Masorah, the second tradition, the Hod, the majesty, was experiential. One can know the entire Masechet Shabbos and still not know what Shabbos is. To truly know what Shabbos is, one has to spend time in a Yiddish home. Even in those neighborhoods made up predominantly of religious Jews today, one can no longer talk of the sanctity of Shabbos. True, there are many Jews. This is a very often quoted idea from Rabbi Soloveitchik. There are many Jews in America who observe Shabbos, but there are no Erev Shabbos Jews who go out to greet Shabbos with beating hearts and pulsating souls. There are many who observe the precepts with their hands, with their feet, and with their mouths, but there are few indeed who truly know the meaning of the service of the heart. Right, so he says the second hand that Moshe added on his own on top of Yeshua was to teach this experiential element. How exactly that's conveyed by the hand, I don't really know, but it's a beautiful idea about Moshe focusing not just on the technicalities of what has to be taught, but on the full body experience, to make it a living thing.
That's very nice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful description. But what really caught my attention, and when I say what really caught my attention is what I really was struck by the shir that I listened to during the fast day when I was trying to not think about eating, um, was an idea that we're going to see in the next several sources. So in the Medrash Rabbah, source number 4, um, it picks up on, we already mentioned that, right? We're going to go back and look at the first half of chapter 27. So the Medrash Rabbah wants to know, why are these two stories juxtaposed? Why is the story of Yehoshua's ordination come right after the story of Benot Tzlofchad, of the daughters of Tzlofchad? And the Medrash says as follows. I'm in the second line in the Hebrew. Why did Moshe specifically ask about God appointing a leader following the discussion of the inheritance and the allotment of the land? Kivan sheyarshu benot tzlovchad avihen, amar Moshe harei hasha'a she'etzba bat tzorchi. Once the daughters of Tzlofchad were successful and they were able to gain inheritance from their father, even though the original law seemed to exclude them from it, Moshe says, okay, now the time has come that I can ask for what I want to ask for. If these girls, if these daughters can inherit from their father, then it's only fair and it's only logical that my own biological children should inherit my leadership position. Moshe thinks that when he says, God, please appoint a leader, that God's going to say, okay, Moshe, your children, your sons will be the leader, or one of your sons will be the leader. Amar lo Kadosh Baruch Hu, notzer teina yochel pirya. God replies to Moshe, though, with the pasuk from Mishlei, the one who guards the fig gets to pick the fruit. Banecha yashvu lahem velo asku b'Torah. I think I probably have to scroll down in the English. Your children, Moshe, did not occupy themselves with Torah study. Yehoshua harbe she'atcha v'harbe chalak lo lecha kavod. But Yehoshua really put in a lot of time and effort studying and serving you and helping you. He would get up early and stay late in the base medrash. He would organize the benches. He would set up the mats. Since he served you so faithfully and so loyally, Moshe, it's only fitting that he should be the one to serve and take over the leadership. Yoshua bin Nun. In order to fulfill this verse from Mishlei, the one who guards the fig can pick its fruit. Right. So according to this, the juxtaposition of the two stories is that Moshe was hopeful after seeing the daughters of Tzlofchad successfully inherit their father, that his sons would also be able to successfully inherit him and follow him. And God says, nope, that's not the case. That's not how things are going to be. Okay, so that's kind of the background to the next 3 sources we're going to look at. The first source, source number 5 from Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Yosei Omer, Yehi mamon chavercha chaviv alecha kishalach. Your friend's money, we're really focused on the second part of this Mishnah, but your friend's money, your friend's possession should be as dear and precious to you as your own. V'hatkein atzmecha lilmod Torah. Make yourself fit to study Torah. She'ena yerushalach. Since it will not be yours by inheritance. Torah is not something that is inherited. Torah is something that we all have to prepare ourselves and put much work and effort in order to achieve it. Okay, that's what Rabbi Yossi tells us in Pirkei Avot. Seems to be a direct contradiction to what we see in Sefer Devarim, in what we sing on Simchas Torah, what our kids, one of the first songs that our kids learn in school. Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Morasha Kihilat Yaakov. Moshe commanded us the Torah, a Morasha, an inheritance for the assembly of Jacob. right? That seems to say pretty clearly that Torah is a Yerusha. Torah is something that is inherited and passed down.
It's not passed down necessarily, I would suggest, through individual families.
Hmm.
It is community.
Okay, so
It
there's
is a
a.
best medrash that is open to everyone and anyone,
Mhm.
24/7, basically. Um, and that's a little bit different. There's it seems to me there's a medrash, and I don't have a direct citation for it, but about at the time of the Gemara that somebody who was new to Torah, he was the first in the family in many generations to get involved, and he's hanging around with the other people from the base medrash, and those other people, they have Torah that they quote from their fathers, their grandfathers, their great grandfathers, and it began to annoy him some, and he was stressed a little bit by it. And he said, uh, uh, "My grandfather and my father were not great Torah scholars, but they were bakers, good bakers. And what I learned from them is that fresh bread is the best.
Mm, nice.
So if the learning that you have is only that which you remember because you heard it over and over again specifically, but you didn't work in the base medrash itself to expand your learning and deepen the learning, that's sort of stale. Anyway,
Interesting. Interesting.
Very good.
Mhm.
I don't think I've heard that specific source before. If you can find it, I'd love to see it.
I have to
Avi
look
was
for it.
here, he'd have it in the chat already.
Right.
Um, right. I mean, I guess that could be rebutted by saying, yes, fresh bread is best, but aged wine is the best also, right? So,
Man does not live by bread alone. You have to have the wine too.
right, right, right. Okay. So with this with these few sources as background in mind, let's see what Avot Rabbi Natan does with this. Right, so Avot Rabbi Natan, remember, is like a parallel to Pirkei Avot. Didn't make it into the Mishnah, but most understand that it's the same basic material, different versions, from the same time period as Pirkei Avot. So on this, Avot Rabbi Natan says, "Atken atzmacha lilmod Torah she'eno Yerushulach," right? Prepare yourself, gird yourself to study Torah because it's not inherited to you. Ketzad, what does this mean? B'sha'ah shara Moshe Rabbeinu et banav she'ein behen Torah sheya'amdu b'nesiut acharav. When Moshe saw, back to the first medrash that we encountered, that his children were not versed in Torah, that they would be able to assume his leadership after him. Nitatef amad betfilah, he wrapped himself in prayer. Amar lefanav, ribono shel olam, hodieni et mi sheyechanes v'et mi yotzei berosh kol ha'am. Says, God, let me know if it's not going to be my own children, who will be the leader for the people. Shneimar v'Reb Moshe, he quotes our pasuk. Amar le'Kadosh Baruch Hu leMoshe, kach lechat Yoshua. God says to Moshe, take Yoshua. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu leMoshe, lech v'amod lo torgiman. And what does it mean to stand Joshua in front of the people? It means find a torgaman, right, a translator, or right, or maybe it's someone who can just better amplify what he's saying. But right, take someone who's going to help him present and communicate with the people. V'yidrosh lifanecha Birosh Gedolei Israel, and he will darshan, he'll teach in front of you and in front of all the leaders of Israel. Otasha'a, Amar le Moshe Yoshua. At that moment, Moshe turns to Joshua and he says, Yoshua, Am zesh ani moser lecha, enei moser lecha tayashim ela gidiim. This nation which I'm giving to you, they're going to be in your charge. They are not goats. They are kids. They're not fully grown goats. They are kids. Vikvasim, they're not sheep. They are, what's the baby goat?
Lambs.
They're lambs. They're lambs. Thank you. Adain lo nitzasku b'mitzvot. Why is that the case? Because they haven't yet occupied themselves with mitzvot. By dying lo higiu l'tayashim, they have not yet become goats. Shene'emar imoti, okay. The message that Moshe gives Joshua right before Joshua takes the mic, takes the dais, takes the lectern, the stender, is about to take his first act of teaching and leading the Jewish people. Moshe says, Joshua, you should know that this nation you're about to take lead over, they're still kids. They've got a lot of growing to do. They got a lot of learning to do. That's the message that Moshe gives. And so this shir that I heard from Aviva Lauer, she really she takes it in two radically different directions. At first, she says, what Moshe is saying to Yehoshua is it's quite kind of like an endearing, nice, gentle message, right? Just know what you're getting yourself into, right? They've got a lot of learning to do. They've got a lot of growing to do. They have not yet become full-fledged goats. Sorry. Um, they have not yet become full-fledged goats and fully grown sheep, for they still have not taken on the mitzvah. They haven't had the time or the wherewithal to start dealing with the mitzvot, and therefore they have not become fully grown. They have not become full-fledged goats. Okay, so this is a AI transcript of a podcast. So then if we go to the last paragraph here, she says on my first and probably second read of this, because I've been spending a lot of time with Avot Rabbi Natan lately, and on my first read, I thought this was a very understanding of Moshe. I didn't think it was critical. I thought that he was saying, listen, Joshua, I'm going to give you some advice because I want you to succeed. You have to understand that these people are not fully grown yet. They're not fully matured. They're still traumatized. They're still coming out of however many years of slavery. It's really hard for them. You need to treat them gently. You need to treat them with delicacy and care. And I loved that. And I even shared it with my husband, right? So it's a very beautiful read. It's a very nice, sensitive message, departing message that Moshe gives to Yehoshua. It's a nice piece of advice. Let's pause for a second. There any questions or thoughts or reactions to what we've said up to this point?
Well, it sounds as if she's presuming that it's the first generation, but it's not. It's the second generation.
Right, right. So, right, to say that they're still traumatized by slavery, so it's like what Robert was saying, right? Sort of generational or national slavery, that they're still, even if they weren't the ones to have experienced the slavery, they grew up, right, like the children of Holocaust survivors who grew up affected by what their parents went through. Um, so yeah, it's not you could read it as she's I don't think she's misreading or making such a gross error in the story and the where it's taking place. I think she's saying they still got some growing up to do.
Right. Yeah. And then Dvarim, this
Hmm.
is often a question of, well, which group of people is Moshe really speaking to?
Yeah.
The new ones that are largely it's them, but of course there are some who were not taken, like the women and others, but they haven't taken on all the mitzvahs yet. A lot of them they can't. They have to. They're the ones that have to be done in the land, and
Yeah.
so it's they're still kind of awkward about it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Understandable. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so let's go back. Remember this, and let's go back to the first half of chapter 27, the Benot Tzlov. ותקרבנה בנות צלופחד בן חפר בן גלעד בן מכיר בן מנשה למשפחות מנשה בן יוסף ואלה שמות בנותיו מחלה נועה וחגלה ומלכה ותרצה. So the daughters of Tzlofchad, the son of Chefer, the son of Gilad, the son of Machir, the son of Menashe, from the tribe of Menashe, the son of Yosef, and their names are Machla, Noah, Chagla, Malka, and Tirzah. Just that first verse is quite a mouthful, right? And it gives us level of details of names that we don't typically get, right? So first of all, anytime that a family is traced all the way back to the founding tribe of that family, that's quite significant, right? That indicates that something out of the normal is happening. And that the names of the five daughters would be singled out is also quite rare in the Torah. ותעמודה לפני משה ולפני אלעזר הכהן ולפני הנשיאים וכל עדה פתח על מועד לאמור. They stood before Moshe and Eleazar and the princes and the entire people at the opening of the tent, saying, right? And it's interesting to juxtapose, right? To think we're already thinking about the juxtaposition. So they're standing in front of Moshe, Eleazar, the Nesiim, and the entire nation, just as Moshe was instructed to stand Joshua in front of Eleazar and the entire nation, right? So that's also interesting. And what do they say? Avinu meit bamidbar, v'lo haya b'toch ha'ida hanoadim al Hashem b'dat Korach. Our father died in the desert, but he wasn't part of Korach's rebellion. Ki b'cheto meit, ubanim lo hayulo. But he died of his own sin, and he didn't have sons. I think previous year, we looked at this notion that bechet omet, he died of his own sin, and right, understanding who was Tzlofchad. I think we did that one year in Parsha Shir also. But anyway, he did not have sons. Lama yigara Hashem avinu mitoch mishpachto ki ein lo bein tna lanu achuzah b'toch achei avinu. Why should our father be cut off from the rest of his family because he didn't have a son? Let us inherit among our cousins or our uncles. Moshe has no idea what the answer is, so he brings their case before God. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Kain b'not Tzlofchad dovrot, Naton yitin lahem achuzat ma'achala b'toch achei avihem, v'avarta nachlat avihen lahem. God says to Moshe, they're speaking the truth. You should give to them an inheritance among their father's brothers, and give their father's portion to them. And not only is this true for Benot Tzlofchad, but it is true for anyone in a similar situation. If a man died without sons but with daughters, you can give the inheritance to the daughters. If there is no daughter, then the brothers or the uncles or the cousins can get it. If, right, etc., etc. So, right, I think we noted previously that it's not only that that they get a favorable judgment, but it becomes precedent for other cases, right? It's a much more expansive ruling than just their specific question, and that in itself is also a remarkable fact. So a few things that are worth noting about this in this context. There's a lot of things worth noting about the story of Benot Tzlofchad, but one thing worth noting is Vayakrev Moshe Mishpatan Lifnei Hashem. Moshe brings their case before God. There's a lot of midrashim that criticize Moshe. Why did Moshe not know the answer to the question? Why did he have to bring the case to God? And he's criticized. Right? It points to other previous instances where he was perhaps a little bit arrogant or haughty, right? Or some say maybe it wasn't so much Moshe's arrogance, but it was to highlight the righteousness and the modesty of the Benot Tzlofchad, that they merit having this halacha said over in their name, that they came forward, right? Many point out, if they didn't come forward, would we know this halacha? Right? When else would this have been transmitted to Moshe and Bnei Israel? If Benot Tzlofchad didn't come forth and ask their question, if they didn't speak up for what they thought was unfair and misapplication of the law, would we ever know? Right? So that's a really important when we think about Just the way that the halachic system works is you have to ask a question. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and ask a question. And that's another really important lesson. Um, this is what Aviva Lauer did with the story, and the fact that it's the one that precedes the appointment of Yehoshua. She points to the Gemara in Bava Batra. The Gemara tells us, Tana benot tzlofchad chachmaniotin, darshaniotin, tzidkaniotin. The daughters of Tzlofchad were chachmaniot. They were smart. They were wise. Darshaniot. They knew how to darshan. They knew how to exegetically read the text. Tzidkaniot, and they were righteous. And then the Gemara gives proof, right, for all these characteristic traits of the Bnot Tzlofchad. You can look at that on your own. That's not quite as essential for what she does with it. But what she says is we have this story of Bnot Tzlofchad. Bnot Tzlofchad understand what the law is that Moshe is saying. They understand the implications of it for themselves, and they speak up and they say, this can't be. Can't be that God's law, that God's halacha, that God's Torah would be so unfair and so exclusionary. And so they speak up, and they're vindicated not only by a change in the law, but a change that comes from God himself. God says, Cain benot tzlofchad dovrot. They are correct. They are speaking the truth. It's like when God says to Abraham, Kol asher tamar lecha Sarah shema bekola. Whatever Sarah says to you, listen to her voice. Listen to what Sarah says. Right? God says that they are correct. And so if we have benot tzlofchad, we have these totally capable, remarkable women who just appear prior to the appointment of a new leader. She makes the point that maybe Moshe is not the one to lead the people into the land because Moshe doesn't understand who the people are. Moshe still sees them as developmentally stunted, as kids rather than goats, as lambs rather than sheep, as having a lot of growing to do. And maybe it's Moshe who doesn't understand just how great and how fully developed and how capable and how remarkable this people truly is. And Moshe should have understood that because Moshe just had a dealing with Benot Tzlofchad. Moshe just encountered the cream of the crop of the generation that he's telling Yoshua isn't developed. No, they were developed. And maybe, so the suggestion that she makes is that maybe Moshe was stuck in his ways, right? It often happens that leaders fall into one way of seeing things, one way of interacting, and they can't see, right? The goal of a teacher is for their students to surpass them. And Moshe didn't see that. Whether that, again, you could read it as hypercritical of Moshe, right? How could Moshe not have seen this? Shame on him. We call him Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, the great teacher, should have understood and should have seen, or no, but that Moshe also had blinders, and Moshe, no, not that he just wasn't able to appreciate who they were. He was, maybe he wasn't the right type of leader for where they were in their development. And so that's the basic point that she makes, is that perhaps we can read the juxtaposition of these two stories as showing us why Moshe was not the correct leader, was not the fit leader to continue with the people. And that's specifically why Moshe, in addition to what he and Aaron did by hitting the rock and not speaking to it, but that he was undeserving of leading the people in. Right? She walks it back a little bit in the. I'm sorry, I didn't give you the source of where this. You can read what she says, or the AI transcript of what she says. She walks it back a little bit in the second paragraph. She says the first thing is true, right? That if a teacher has to be able to teach their students where the students are and appreciate, right? If you're given the assignment of teaching a middle school class, that they're going to be a middle school class and they're not going to have the same rich developed ideas as a high school class or a college class. If you're teaching if you've been teaching honors or AP for many years and now you're sent to the grade level class, so you have to be able to adopt. And that's an important it's an important lesson for Moshe to give Yoshua, to be sure that you're relating to the people where they are. But along with that is also a realization that maybe Moshe didn't fully know where the people were or wasn't able to fully appreciate it or to perceive it. Um, I thought it was a really interesting putting together of all these different sources. I don't have anything much else to say on it, but I think it's a really interesting, creative, and I think truthful read of this chapter of our parsha, chapter 27. Why does the story of Bnot Tzlofchad immediately precede the appointment of Yoshua? Maybe this is part of the reason why. Any thoughts?
I find it difficult to accept that. I really do.
Okay.
I thought a lot about it today. I thought, gee whiz, where did this come from? Um, I mean, you're telling us that it's a putting together of a number of different sources, but I don't read those sources that way at all. But it's all supposition. We just don't really know. Um,
Yeah, that's true.
uh, I mean, he he he's telling him he's going to have to do a whole lot of teaching, but that's for sure. So
Right.
it's I think that's very clear. Um, but the other disturbing thought that I feel I should express is maybe Moshe had learned it and he forgot it. That's could be the other thing. That is a well-known
Right.
um, commentary upon him when he becomes angry with the people, and then he forgot which rock it was, and so on. And there's also another example of where he becomes angry, and the anger drives out the halacha, which happened with the deaths of Nadav and Avihu, and then confronting Aaron about
Right.
why he
And
didn't
and
eat
and so
the
there are
proper
midrashim
things
that
in
say
Moshe.
also that he forgot the ruling for Bnot Tzlofchad because of that. That he knew it and he
Yes,
forgot it.
and that I would think would impel a person. I mean, I don't know about anybody else who's 80 years old, but I know that I have some problems remembering things now. And I know they are what's called demand naming situations. In other words, when a person becomes slightly more anxious or they have to come up with something, that's when it seems to just absolutely pop right out of your mind and you can think of it, that kind of thing. And it's a natural process because it requires the production of certain enzymes to do the retrieval job. It isn't
Hmm.
that it wasn't put in there, it's just it takes longer for the retrieval enzymes to help you to find it. So it's not that in and of itself isn't terribly alarming, but it is a definite nuisance. But whatever, for it's possible that he was beginning to think, well, gosh, I don't want to forget something that I had learned, and it's time to get this new leader in here and let's get him going.
Yeah.
And so that to me seems more plausible, but that's just projection.
Okay. Okay. Beatrice, were you gonna say something?
I was I was wondering if it throws any light on Joshua.
Yeah. I mean,
And
so if it does, yeah, so right, so that's probably part two of this year. I don't know if Aviva Lauer develops it any further. But right, so um it's a different type of leader who's able to lead and teach and effectively communicate to a fully developed people, right? Just because they're fully intellectually developed doesn't mean they don't still have room to grow and to learn. So maybe it's highlighting Joshua's strength in relating to them there. That would certainly be one implication of this. Um, and maybe just about his ability to be able to see who they truly are. That would be another perhaps implication that Moshe was, for whatever reason, had blinders on and couldn't appreciate and couldn't see them for who they were. So yeah, it definitely says something about Yehoshua. You have to, do a little bit more work to exactly fill in what and see if there's any more either clues in the text that we've seen already or other texts that further elaborate on that. But yes, it definitely sheds light on Joshua.
Another way to look at the goats and the kids and the sheep and the lamb is that the sin offering for a leader who seems to be recalcitrant is a ram, a goat, grown up goat.
Hmm.
Um, and the normal offering for a person who has missed the mark, who had like a sin offering or something. It's a sheep that doesn't really quite sure what they're supposed to be doing, but uh, he's the one who knows ruach. That's from Hasidus. It's a clear message that there is that's the emotional dimension of the soul. So what he's telling him is we need somebody who's going to be able to watch how people are really growing and how they're going. They're growing, but
Right.
where are they going? So somebody who has the capacity to read them in a deeper sense almost all the time, who really can hear emotionally what's going on with them and can lead them more effectively, therefore. So that's another way perhaps to describe what's going on with the goats and the kids and the sheep and the
Okay.
lamb.
I hear that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So getting back to a man not being able to leave his land and everything to his daughters if he had no sons,
Right.
and then the women pled their case. Um, if they hadn't pled their case and they hadn't gotten any rights, where did a man's land and his inheritance, where did that go?
So presumably in the first generation, he just wouldn't, meaning like that's part of the claim, right? There's a subscript to the story of Benot Slavchad, which is that at the very end of Sefer Bamidbar next week, their fellow tribe members come to Moshe and complain, and they say, now that Benot Slavchad are going to inherit their father's portion, um, if they marry someone from a different tribe, then presumably the land would be passed on to their sons who take on the tribal identity of their father. And our tribal land will be diminished as a result. So Moshe says, you're right. And therefore, for the first generation, they have to marry only within the tribe of Menashe. They have to keep the land within the tribe. So all this is a long way of saying that the reason why it was only only the daughters who had to marry within their tribe is because then after the first generation, land would go back to the original family that inherited it as part of the portion of the land when they captured the land when they captured Eretz Yisrael. So presumably, if you know, and their complaint seems to be, our family won't have any land because if it's only going to men and to sons, so there just won't be a portion for us. And I guess, the assumption is they would get married and they would have a place to live with their husbands, and we don't know if the mother was alive and what would have been with her. But that it seems to be that that's part of it is it's this first generation that set things for everything moving forward. So if so it's a slightly different it was a slightly different concern, but it does become the precedent for laws of Yerusha, for laws of inheritance. That in again, most of us we can have a share a different time about the halachic way to establish a will or inheritance, the bequeathment, but the halacha says that sons inherit and daughters don't. And if there is no son, then it would go to the daughter. And if not, like just like it says here. But the parent can set up and say how they want their assets distributed, and then you have to fulfill what they want. There's a bit of a debate about what the proper mechanism is for that. That's not for now.
Like
But
a Jane Austen novel.
say that again.
Like a Jane Austen novel.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So
Have the names of the daughters been used for naming children?
yes. The name Noah is a very popular name for daughters. Tirza is another name. Machla, I haven't heard of any Machlas because it also translates as illness, and there's probably midrashim that talk about that.
There's a machla in a famous Yiddish play.
Oh, okay, there you go. Chogla, I don't think I've never heard of a Chogla, but that's and I mean Malka definitely. Like Malka means queen, and there's many girls
Yeah.
named Queen, named Malka. So yes, the names are definitely used.
Very good.
And they're in a different order in the other story. So
Yeah,
that's another
yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Mhm.
All right. So even if you don't agree, I hope it gave you something to think about, and we will continue next week. Can't believe we're
I'm
coming to the
Wonderful.
end of Sefer Bamidbar
Thank you.
already. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much.
I am
All right.
most appreciative of this year.
All right.
Yeah,
So
sure.
public service announcement is this Shabbos, Robert is leading a book introduction. No expectation that you have read the book, but he will be introducing the book. Is the plan, Robert, that there will be a discussion of the book at a later date, or just you're trying to sell it? And you're muted. We can't hear you. You're muted, Robert.
Sorry. I remarked to Janet that it's something that is very readable, whether for an adult or for a child or teenager, whoever. And I thought it's interesting in that fashion.
Okay.
And so anyway, the book itself was written with the editorial assistance of people who are professional educators,
Mm-hmm.
and it include at least one of the two copies I've got floating around has a study guide with it,
Oh,
which
okay.
leads to the kinds of information that are in it and images that are in it. The book also has some photographs in it. I don't have any blown up versions of it, but still, it's interesting to see the reality, and
Okay.
it's in a location that's interesting in another way for people who've seen Schindler's List. This is directly involved with him. He's a character in the book, and much of the book takes place in Krakow or in the outskirts of Krakow. So anyway,
Okay.
I thought it was interesting.
All right. So
I want to
that's
share
this
it.
Shabbos, an hour before Mincha. I originally, Toby and I are supposed to be away for Shabbos, but our plans might be falling apart. So maybe I'll see you, maybe I won't. But in any case, I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I'll definitely be here next Tuesday on the Zoom.
Very
All
good.
right,
Thank
Tov.
you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
be well.
Good night.